Cheri Anderson, you are a podcast host, life coach, and corporate wellness coach. You describe yourself as a guide keen to sit with people through personal and professional transitions or pain, whether from breakups, trauma, or injuries. You also help clients discover and affirm their vision, purpose, identity, and healing by unbreaking hearts and bodies and rebuilding authentic identities. You rather uniquely believe that the process of changing one's health, career, relationship, or finances includes actual movement. So you work with individuals and teams as a movement coach. Your podcast, Unbreak My Heart, is about navigating the messiness of breakups. The show's intent has been to facilitate conversations that lead guests and listeners to the keys to what shackles us to our breakup story and experience. Cheri, you value becoming aware of stress, managing the mind and emotions, being more deliberate, fully self-expressed, authentic, and empowered, both independently and in relationships. Cheri Anderson, welcome to Cutting for Sign.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
Introduction, well written. It sounds like someone's telling me about myself as if I don't know me, but if that were me, I like it. Like
I think it's you,
like
Cheri.
Who that is.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to just say, it's like someone's telling myself as if I care. That's what I thought you were going to say. Which would have been fucking
I mean,
gangster.
I have that side of my sarcasm. I wasn't sure.
Just undercut the entire Excellent.
So this is a fun episode because Cheri and I knew each other from a decade. We met in a community a decade ago, and we have been keeping in touch for the last 10 years. And then this guy, you guys, I forget how you meet, but you started talking.
You want to talk about is it okay to say how we met?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I met.
I can't wait to hear this.
I matched with her on a dating app.
Oh, that's right.
And she didn't message me. It was
probably
one of the dating apps where the woman has the opportunity. She gets to choose whether or not to message. And Cheri chose not to. By the way, this was like perfect. 8 months ago. This was a while ago.
Yeah.
And then I, being the persistent SOB that I am, really liked that you did a podcast, like, because you wrote that on there, and I write there on mine, and I just thought that was very, very cool. Your podcast was very easy to find, and I messaged her through her through a podcast thing, and then but then it was like not really, I don't know, it wasn't really dating. We were talking podcasts, and then we connected through that, and then. But she didn't message me even back from that for like another few months. And then guilty. The big grin on your face doesn't sound like it was too much of a regretful choice.
If it makes you feel any better, I've known Daniel a long time too, maybe about the same amount of time, and we didn't really start hanging out until this last year. So.
Yeah, Ron ghosted me for 8 years.
I had to make sure, I just had to
Well, what was cool is that when we did start chatting, got to know each other like through the podcast values and listening. I listened to a little bit of what you do and stuff. And then she ended up inviting me on to be a guest on her show. And so we did that.
Yeah.
And then that became her here. So that's a pretty cool little, and then the most funny part is that you knew that I knew Ron.
But I never said anything.
Yeah, she didn't say anything.
Strong. That's a strong move. It's a power move.
I was like, this is amusing to me. I'm not sure if he'll mention me to Ron first or I'll connect with Ron first. But either way, it'll be entertaining. This is my own sense of humor to myself to see how Daniel connects you and I knowing each other.
It's just like a little, just a Susan manipulation. The faintest whiff.
I think I was walking my dog. Walking my dog is where I do some of my best thinking. It's kind of similar to shower thoughts, And he called me. I think I was walking my dog, and he called me, and he's like, "I'm going to be on a podcast with Cheri Anderson, Unbreak My Heart," and I just started laughing. I was like, "Of course you are. Of course you're going to be on that podcast."
So you were both toying with me a little bit. Awesome.
Yeah, I felt the anticipation of the joy you might feel when he mentions it to you. Like I was waiting to hear back. So that's really fun for me to come full circle.
That's a good gift. I appreciate that gift. Thank you, Cheri.
You're welcome.
That's a sweet spot of like being in someone else's little web of excitement. Is like, I'm totally fine with that. Sounds great.
That's
sit back and enjoy it,
Yeah. Cheri,
I just had a sure. Oh, go ahead.
No. I want you to make
this is where Ron says a question that's like not very interesting and off topic, and it ruins the flow. So please let him.
Well, I was just gonna say I needed to assure Daniel that there wasn't any bad blood between the two of us. Like I was like secretly hiding that I knew you. So he was like, well, "Why wouldn't you mention this to me?"
Oh,
and I could hear it in his voice.
Yeah.
And I could tell he was like, that's so weird that I'm meeting this person and we're talking about, sharing my story. And she like completely hides the fact that they know each other. I said, no, it was completely out of entertainment.
No, you and I I don't trust you. For sure. Yeah, no, there's not a lot of bond. Like,
I kind of wish though, like I wish that maybe we had played the storyline that you and I were like mortal enemies.
Now you're talking.
Like, like death. Fight to the death if we see each other in the street, Kill Bill kind of style. Like,
what's funny about that is that if you all on a whim, because you do run into each other occasionally and talk, and you have
we are in the same neighborhood often.
It's not like
well, I mean, it's your neighborhood, I'm in it often.
So anytime, welcome anytime. You're welcome here anytime.
My personal take is that you both missed an excellent opportunity to pull a practical joke on me and really have a little bit of fun.
Next time this happens, if it's between me or you or anyone else, and anyone else listening, like, I'm in for the long con. I want to like.
I've always envied people who like can do that type of lifelong personal prank on someone.
Yeah,
totally. So thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. And maybe it's not too late for you to both cook something up. Like you could even weave it into like, this is all part of the long con. Even this very comfortable, laughy story is actually just to show that you really do hate each other.
An arbitrary lawsuit where Daniel's the key witness. We send him a letter. He's got to go to court. We're not there, of course.
I want to be psychologically hurt by this and really get through it.
I can easily see this happening, but we'll see about it.
Okay. I like this idea.
I think I was telling Ron, was I telling you the story of the two times in my life where someone did pull a good prank like this on me?
No.
I won't go into the total details of it, but this was good. Like one time I used to do a bit of acting, and I was in a movie, like an independent movie down in California. I'd flown down to California to do it. Long story short, we went through 3 weeks of filming, and it was really good, but it's also emotional and intense. It was the film director's first movie, feature length and all that. Well, on the last day of shooting, we're in a really nice hotel in the town, and we'd rented a room as the set. And all of a sudden I hear the director and the lead actor arguing, and then it builds and builds and builds, and they'd known each other for years. They start breaking out these things, the personal things that were obviously building through years. They're screaming, and all of us leave the room. We're sitting outside, we're talking, we're like, what are we gonna do? Do we help? And they're just going and going, and then it kind of comes down, and we come back in, and they look at us, and they just point to one of the corners, and there's a camera filming all of it, and then they just smile, and something about that told us that it was all a fucking
punchline.
They nailed it though.
Oh my god,
they did it so well.
Yeah.
And then smash cut a few years later, a friend of mine did that to me. Walked in, we were co-directing something. We've been working for months on this play. It was a kid's play, a Shakespeare thing. And he walks in front of the person who was our ambassador to the actual school that the kids went to.
Yeah.
And he starts ripping me. It's a really good friend of mine. And he just rips and rips and rips. And I was like starting to get upset, and I was like starting to like cry. I was like, I wanted to attack. I was going through all kinds. This guy's never said an unkind word to me. And then he's going and going and going. The lady is really uncomfortable, and we're starting to like get up. We're in a restaurant. And then he starts laughing his ass off. And it sounds worse than I just said. It was perfect. Like he timed it excellently. But he had to like put our friendship on the line.
That's I don't know if I'm capable of humor
intense.
Like that. That's super intense. That's kind of like, it could have traumatized you. That could have blown up in his face.
I said the story a little bit wrong. He did it perfect.
He did it
perfect. like
Man.
for everybody. It was a perfect build, tension, catharsis, laughter.
Are you guys still friends? That's the question.
Oh, he's never said an unkind word to me. That was 10 years ago.
But do you talk? Like, are you friends?
Constantly.
Friends.
He's one of my closest friends.
Okay. All right. I'll let this pass.
But it's something that you do, and this is my theory, is when there's tension that builds over an intense thing that you're doing together, a movie, we were co-directing a play, and there are things you notice about each other that get on your nerves. And then in both of those 6 situations, the people use those things, and it ends up clearing the air. And it ends up like being a cathartic reset. And because you get this huge laugh and this bond over, it was amazingly done. I couldn't do it because I would be too intense. I would actually hurt someone.
I think I would hurt someone so bad that it would be irreversible damage.
I don't think so. I think you'd do great.
You do great at pretend insulting
to pretend to be pissed off and angry at somebody.
You don't think so?
I think the moment I like open the floodgate to like the truth, like all of the cattle that's like behind the chute, like suddenly get out and just burst open the fence
and trample.
For sure. How about you? Do you think you could pull something like that off?
If it depends on the rapport and chemistry I have with the person. Yeah.
I mean, tight.
I think I would have fun doing it and be able to pull it off. But it wouldn't be universal. It would not be a universal ability. Timing is, and timing is so key. Like you can pull a prank, and then if you don't get the right moment where you let that person know, like, hey, this isn't fun, then you go too far, and it's really hard to recover from crossing that line.
100%.
Really hard.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It sounds like you've had some experience in this.
I have had
this is a prank
and nothing as intense as like hurting someone's feelings, but just like hiding fake roaches around our house, like because with a roommate that hated roaches. I was very playful with this creative living roach, and she
couldn't handle
never
it.
Forgave me for it. No.
Oh, you went too far. Oh, no.
I went too far. I missed the moment to tell her like, hey, it's not real, and I won't. I'll spare you the details of the story.
He's like shaking, uncontrollable in the corner.
She had to call someone else and be like, "There's a roach in my bed and I can't find it." And she escalated so quickly. I could not jump in at the right moment to de-escalate it and make it like this is supposed to be like a playful prank. Yeah. So,
Google sometime Jon Snow pranks his wife. The actor that played Jon Snow in Game of Thrones loves practical jokes. And he pranked his wife. It was brand new. Like they just
wait. Are you gonna ruin this? Are you gonna like tell us the
just
prank?
Fuck it. It's not that big a deal.
Okay.
Don't watch it.
Long story short. It's just a video of his wife in their home. I can't remember her name. Opening the fridge and fucking losing her mind, terrified, freaking out, crying. Well, then the camera, Jon Snow, the actor, I don't know his name either. He walks in and consoles her and stuff. And then the camera goes into the fridge, and he had built a perfect replica of his severed head.
Oh, geez. Goodness gracious.
But the funniest part of it is that when she freaks out, she has a Brita filter in her hand, and she opens the fridge and sees it, freaks out, but she like runs over and puts the Brita filter down and then like continues her thing, and that becomes the story of like
somehow her brain wants to take care of the Brita filter, sets it down, doesn't lose it. I like that. Okay. All right. So my daughter asked me the other day, we saw a prank where the person has the table with a hole cut in it, and you put your head through
that's
it.
A good one.
And she's like, I want to do that.
Awesome.
And I thought, let's go for it.
Yeah,
let's like go build a table, figure this out, have the whole setting.
Birthday for more.
Who knows what? Yeah, like something. It's gonna happen. So you two are in on it, of course.
What a simple one. Listening. I love stuff like that. I want to be pranked so bad, but I don't. Yeah, definitely don't. But
I feel like he's begging us indirectly both to prank him.
He's like, please scare me, but not too much. Please scare me.
It's a little like much. I'm just allowing a little bit of room for a schizophrenic moment. I could do it. Don't fucking do it, but just please do it.
All right.
And don't.
Okay. Cheri Anderson, you're a relationship expert and have a podcast called Unbreak My Heart, which is a really, really fun podcast title.
It is.
I like that
title
a lot. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought we'd talk to you about breakups today. How's that sound?
Sounds fun. I mean, it's not a fun topic, but from my point of view, getting to sit in the seat of listening to everybody's stories, there's quite a bit of variety and diversity and human experience, you know?
Yeah, it is one of those human experiences that's like, it's pretty close to universal, I'd imagine. Like up there, you know, pretty high. And what was the moment where you're like, these stories that everybody has like needs to be highlighted in some way? Was that because you thought like I think this is what Ron Cecil thinks. I think whatever pain we experience, we can mythologize into, or I should say this. Sometimes there can be a pain or something that is so great in our life that we can mythologize at some point, thinking that no one else has experienced pain like this, or no one, or the advice that could change other people wouldn't work for me, right? Is that partly why you wanted to talk about this kind of thing, so that you could show people like, hey, you know, hearing other people's bullshit breakup stories and taking responsibility or being a victim will help other people begin to unwind that stuff?
I would say that would be like a secondary or like further tier down thought. I mean, it's more of like the results or the product of the storytelling in my mind. Like that wasn't what initiated me wanting to do it.
Yeah.
One summer, it kind of is like a multi-step process. Like when I first moved to Oregon, I was freshly divorced, and entered into the dating world and thought people are really bad at this. And if somebody were to write a book, you know, on dating, maybe it could help some people out. But I was never motivated to be that person. Fast forward one summer, literally 7 close friends of mine were going through serious breakups from long-term relationships. And one by one, they would come over. I had just like a rotating part of my bed where there would be tissues and tears, and different friends came over and just wept and shared their sorrows. And I was like, oh, people don't know how to process heartache unless like in a regular everyday relationship oriented way, like divorce. If you were to research support on divorce, there's tons of data, research, books, therapists, et cetera, out there for divorce, but very little at that time was out there for people just going through a breakup.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was an opportunity to serve the people who are having their heart broken, and then also to really give that person the opportunity to move forward from their breakup without carrying the baggage. Because it sucks to be in a fresh relationship with somebody who's stuck in their past. And not that we all don't have pockets where we're stuck in our past, whether it's childhood or otherwise.
Yeah.
But if you could start as fresh as you possibly could be, like your best self, because you really want to partner with somebody, why not have that pathway available to you?
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that people don't know how to do this in general. That's a pretty generalized statement, but I think there's the truth of it is recognized. And I'm wondering, as Ron and I learn a little bit more about our emotions and what's really going on, not just personally, but our biology. You know, our bodies took so long to be created that a lot of our responses to things that are happening in this modern world, which are so new and varied, and they haven't been around through the creation process of our bodies, but our bodies are responding to it in the ways that it learned over millions of years. And so, for example, as we understand it, as I understand it, you know, we will experience a breakup sometimes like a death, because we are feeling sometimes like we are being kicked out of a tribe, like the person we're bonded with, bonded to them as if they are our family. And the experience of getting kicked out of your family through this body's learning has been death. You know, the response is death. So we'll experience it as if it's death, you know, our own death. And that's very intense, and it's too much. And now we experience that many times during a life. Maybe our bodies didn't experience that many times in the life through the creation of these bodies and the little tribes we're in. And so it's like, good God, you're going to experience this trauma over and over and over. And then that's not even to say additional trauma that's in this life, like our actual childhood and losing parents and, you know, all the assault that's going on, you know what I mean? And so it's super intense to experience grief these days, to experience it naturally and fully. And as I talk even just now, I'm wondering if it's just no wonder it is, you know, we're experiencing something that's too intense, and we're experiencing it many times in a lifetime, and it's just overwhelming. So
yeah.
Does that make sense though? I haven't really said
yeah, no, I think that makes sense to me. To Ron Cecil. I was thinking about David McRaney, who is you know, we had an episode with him a couple episodes ago, and he was talking about the science behind that people would rather face actual death. They would rather face something that they could potentially going to die and then be rejected by their community, whether it's their family or lover or a combination of that, or their church or whatever it might be. Like, they would rather face actual death and like be cut off from the tribe.
I actually I heard that last night. I was re-listening to that episode, and I feel like that could be better said, because I don't feel that way. So it's like people just would, because, or is it certain people? Yeah. You know what I mean?
It's probably a baseline of, you know, some number. I mean, it's kind of like saying the greatest fear is public speaking. But because I don't have that, I can't necessarily identify with that. But I do know that feeling. Like when he was talking about that, and I was in the process of leaving the evangelical church 5 years ago, like, I was afraid of death, because the death I was afraid of was
fucking eternal fire.
Yeah, eternal flames. like it's not just leaving that community of people that I, by the way, also desperately wanted to be liked by, received by, accepted by, all that stuff. And it was, okay, I'm cutting that off, but also the fear was like, and they are also thinking I'm going to hell because of this.
Yeah.
And that was hard. That was emotionally, spiritually, physically hard for me to navigate that.
It was hard, but you would rather die. Did you become suicidal?
I did not become suicidal. I know that that's not unheard of, to have those feelings.
Yeah, I get that.
But I have, you know, in that instance for me, that was the second time I've left the evangelical church. So, can't
wait for the third.
You never know. So nice. I did it thrice.
It's like my dad says, you only get married twice.
So I lost my train of thought where I was. I mean, it was.
I was gonna jump in.
Yeah, go, please.
If it comes back to you, feel free to interrupt me. But I think when we think about death, generally it's a one-dimensional thought, right? And I think as I've matured over time and had more experiences with different types of loss and grief, I think death is multidimensional. So when you hear that quote from your guest, when you're genuinely facing death, like you're 100% present. Typically, you're not mentally disassociated, right? Like if you get in a car crash, your life flashes before your eyes. Like there's so many things. Like if you're diagnosed with some terminal illness, like you're all of a sudden your whole perspective on being alive, like physically being alive, comes into a different perspective. And so when you think about what you know and what's familiar to you, and there's the grief and loss around how we identify with what those familiarities are, and the longings of how we're created to want to be connected, to want to belong, to be accepted, to fit in, all those things, then we have to keep living with relearning or re-establishing an identity. And that process is not, I don't think, our natural human nature, right? Yeah. Like in human nature, we are meant to connect with humans and one another. It's like cutting out again.
No, I can hear it. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. We cut out. It's just we lose that part of what we had hoped for, dreamt for, and what we're going to build and grow in together. And so when that's taken away from us, and we have to become that phoenix rising from the ashes, that's exhausting, right? Like it's beautiful and metaphorical, and there's something really special and powerful about it. But because you have to overcome so much to become that phoenix who can rise, and then to know you're vulnerable, that it can happen again, like that part of our human capacity is mind-blowing and also exhausting, right? Like to me, death is multidimensional in that sense. Like if you have to face death, it's like over. You don't have to keep living with what happens after death. I mean, whatever happens after death, we don't know, right? There's a million theories about what that could be, but as far as we know in this version of life, like it's done. But when we go through that other type of loss, we have to reestablish so much stuff, and it's work.
Well said. Yeah,
especially
really well said.
Having to reestablish that stuff when you're emotionally suffering. You know, it's not like you're built up into this great, you know, strong, stable space and then be like, hey, go reinvent yourself. You know, it's like you got to do it kind of at your potentially at your weakest, you know, or weekend.
It's been a long time since I've been in a relationship that has the, you know, I've been married, my second marriage for 11 years, and we've been together for 13 years. And the little bit of dating I did between my first marriage and this marriage, pretty casual, and yet every breakup was like really painful. Even when it felt casual and it was like there wasn't a lot at stake. I remember trying to be so gentle with this girl, and picked her up, and she immediately knew, because who knows what was going on with my vibe, but like I drove her kind of far to a pub. Like she wanted to go to this pub. This was in England, and it was like a while to get there. We get to the pub and it takes me 5 minutes to break up with her. and she's
a
like,
long trip back.
She's like, you could have done this over the phone. And I go, could I? Like, would that have been acceptable? And she's like, yeah, so
you're a little stuck on ceremony.
Yeah, a little bit. So then there was the 40-minute drive back, which was not pleasant because I was in a sports car driving kind of fast, and she had been also traumatized in a sports car before.
Oh, man.
This is the worst. That's a pretty good breakup story, actually.
So we're not in touch anymore, as you can imagine. We're not Facebook friends. No.
That door is bolted closed.
Yeah. Huh. Is there like a way? This is a question for you two, or I don't know, both of you or one of you, but is there a way to enter into a relationship that has the potential for long-term connection, but also has the potential to say, if we don't make it, can we decide now that there's no hard feelings? Can we decide now that this time together is valuable and good, and we don't have to count it as a loss? We don't have to see it as a negative view of ourselves, and we just aren't compatible.
I love that question. That's a great question.
Is that real, or is that pie in the sky thinking?
Do you want to answer it first?
I have a lot to say about this, so take the stage.
He's just gonna one up you once you're done.
I'm not gonna.
He's gonna let you have the floor, and then he's gonna take it.
I'm excited about that question. That's a great question.
Is that? Is that a Gwen? What's her name? The Goop person. What's her name?
Goop. You're saying
Gwyneth Paltrow. Gwyneth Paltrow.
Oh, Gwyneth Paltrow. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Is that like a Gwyneth Paltrow, like, stretch of reality?
I mean, no. The answer is no.
Okay.
We can. It's a 100% super clear no. However, nothing that we do with a relationship is a black and white clear experience. So I don't think if the relationship was maybe 24 hours, like but you're going long term inside the question, you can't start now and decide what will happen in the future and say we'll have no hard feelings. But I think you could say is, at some point after we've overcome those hard feelings, can we have peace between us, whatever that might be? I think 100% yes.
Yeah.
So I would just shift the question a tiny bit in that way.
Gotcha.
Well, plus maybe you can. I think that's kind of the way I was taking your answer too, is you don't know that you will, but there might be a way. Well, and maybe this is somewhere that I wouldn't say I feel strongly enough on this or certain enough to disagree with what you just said, but I do wonder if there are ways to in the beginning of a relationship set an intention and voice that intention and be on the same page with that intention of like, hey, let's not hurt each other. And whether or not that actually happens, maybe you're right, it can't. There always will be pain, and then that pain can heal. Fair enough, you're probably right. But I kind of wonder if there is a way to just be so communicative and intentional and honest in the beginning.
I think you can start with the intention, but you can't promise the outcome where there's no hard feelings.
Yeah, because you can't.
That's all I'm saying.
I was thinking about the woman I was married to before, and she had said we had been separate. I think we were separated for over a year, and had said to me during that time, like she hadn't asked me for the divorce. Actually, I think she had asked me for the divorce at this point. And for some reason for her, that provided a lot of emotional relief for her, and was able to say with a lot of clarity, with a lot of like good nature towards me, Ronnie, I can see a future where we're friends. Not only that, but I can see a future where you and your future partner and me and my future partner are actually friends, or actually like can do this. And I was like, immediately rejected that notion. Whoa. Like right away. I didn't have the capacity to not feel resentful because I was unsure.
Because you wanted her to be your wife still?
Probably.
Like you weren't sure of letting her go at that point?
Yeah, I think at that point there was some of that, but there was also all of the social pressure that I had put on myself, having grown up in the evangelical church, having parents who were divorced 13 times between the two of them. And that I thought, if I can just not do this, I'm going to make it. I'm going to beat them. I'm going to not become my dad. I'm not going to become my mom, and I'm going to win. And so, my ex-wife, like, she was contending with someone who was valuing the idea of marriage more than me valuing myself, like my actual identity, and also her value, like how I valued her. Like I was so fixated on like not breaking the bond because it meant something that I was making up than actually taking care of who Ron Cecil was. But now, fast forward a bunch of years, right? Probably 15 years. And yeah, about 15 years. And she and I have to communicate for various reasons that I covered in the Jay Baker episode, which you don't know the story, but I'll give it the brief one. Okay. I'm in the process still, and I'm undecided if I'm going to complete it, of becoming a confirmed Catholic practitioner. And part of the process of having a Catholic confirmation is that if you had been married before, you have to have that old marriage annulled within the Catholic Church, which is a years long process. And I'm not exaggerating. It is years long. And when the idea, and I'd been quite attracted to the Catholic Church. And I just want to say as an addendum, I am not suggesting nor think that anyone on earth should be Catholic. Like, that is not, that's not my propaganda. I question it myself all the time.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm shocked. There's another time, but I'm shocked that you're
on paper, it makes no sense.
Okay, anyways.
It makes no sense. In practice, there's profound experiences that I've had, including reconnecting with my ex-wife and formally forgiving each other for who we were at that time, and formally forgiving each other for the actions that we participated in. And I don't know, like, if there are miracles, that was a miracle I experienced, because I didn't want to go in that annulment process, but it gave me a tremendous gift, which gives me trust about, like, well, what else is available to me? Yes. I don't know the question. I don't know the answer to that, but now that I'm on the other side of that, like, I can't imagine us all being friends. Like, I'm not trying to seek it out, but like, I'm like, oh yeah, she was probably completely right about that. And I think with that question that I asked, it's a little loaded in the sense that, like, I hope that we could all be adults and choose the best possible outcome for each other. But I also know that when you're in an offended state, it creates so many blind spots in us that it's like really difficult to see the full picture of what's going on.
Well, being pretty entrenched in the dating world and active in it and communicating and meeting a lot of, in my case, women, I find a lot of women want something in general that a lot of men aren't willing or ready to give.
Wait, can I ask Cheri to guess what that is before you say what that is?
Yeah, I don't know. You play around. What?
I mean, the first thing that pops in my mind is commitment, but I don't know if that's what you were going to say.
Okay.
And then what commitment looks like is a further discussion. But in one word, yes, that's what I find all the time, constantly. But really, there's a couple things going on there, and I don't, not to say I know the situation inside and out, but I do know that regardless of what one person interested in another person is willing to give and bringing to the table and blah blah blah, is it's really what sets us up for success in a relationship, in a breakup, in any gray area transition in and out of togetherness, is knowing oneself. That's vague, but the gist is like know what you like, know what you want, make mistakes, know that you don't need to make them again. I think knowing oneself is a great conversation. What does that mean? Knowing what you want is part of that, and knowing what you have to offer, knowing your strengths, knowing the places that you know what not to do, but you're emotionally still not capable of actually following through with that. That would be part of knowing oneself. It's a lot to be able to come to another person and say and present yourself and offer, and then go on an adventure together, and then have minimal pain, especially if it ends up going away from, transitioning apart. But I do think that and I'm not interested in avoiding pain. I am interested in avoiding unnecessary pain, particularly pain that me not knowing myself causes, And I think that's an interesting talk. So maybe it's a matter of degree. Can you get out of a situation without heartbreak? Probably not. But can that heartbreak, instead of being a 7, 8, 9, 10, be a 2, 3, 4, 5? Like that would make,
I would agree with that.
All the difference in my experience of this world.
Yeah.
However, I think when we're thinking about that, it's hard not to ask that question and answer it through your own personal history, the filter that we have of our own experience. Just as you were sharing, I just have like little snippets of stories of different people's breakups that come to mind, and just there's some people out there that are just truly deceptive. This one woman fell in love overseas with a man who was from America as well, and he had a double life. She found out that he had a wife, and he proposed to her and like all this stuff. And to the extent that she could be authentic, she was, only to find out that this person was, living a double life. And it's just crazy. And you just have to decide if you're that person, on the dark side of that experience, are you willing to forgive and move forward and not use that as a form of, like a vow, like I can never trust anybody again, or I can never trust men or women or whatnot. Can I ever trust myself again? It's just, it wrecks you in that way. And if you're willing to come through it, then, there's hope. But some people just get stuck. And that's one of the things I feel most passionate about, is like, wherever that you're stuck, like, do you want to be unstuck? Because it's possible.
Well, in regarding deceptiveness in the dating world, is like, of course there are extreme examples. There's the whole spectrum, of deceptiveness, but I think that they're all really damaging in different ways. And like, I personally am I'm on the path of awareness and understanding myself, and I'm getting better, and I still find myself wanting to be deceptive, particularly around dating. When I meet someone that I'm excited about, it's like all the parts of myself come straight to the forefront and start wanting to like live and wanting to be and putting their little 2 cents in, and the wounded parts are right there, and they have a loud voice, and it's hard. And I think that one of the conversations that I'm excited about having is putting that part of myself out there for people see, for the woman I'm interested in to see, like, if I can reach a place of like radical honesty and just be like, listen, I'm kind of being a shit right now, and this and I've done that, you know, to varying extents. And I'm like, it's liberating because you realize you don't have anything to be afraid of. You know, and we can go into all that stuff, but the idea being that having a conversation, in my case, like for men, to be like, listen, it's okay for part of you to want to be in a committed relationship and give everything you can to someone, and also have another part that's like frustrated that you'd be leaving too much behind. And then that's a very simplistic way of doing it. You can unthread the impulses that we all have and the parts of ourselves even more. But the gist is that there's more than one voice and more than one desire inside, and that's okay. How do we get this all to not equal deceiving someone? How do we get this all to start trending in a better direction? How do we find a way to be that part of ourselves that doesn't experience and act from a place of lack, like this is the last woman on earth, this is the best, and I have to put everything? It's like, no, there's too many people on earth to think that. How can we turn back toward ourselves, become a better person who can act with more integrity? These are questions that I think are really, really valuable. Do
you think that part of that is I'm just so I'm understanding, because I identify with the part that you were describing, where there's a part of you that still wants to somehow be dishonest. Right. And I get that. Like, I know that talking to my children, talking to my wife, talking to my CPA, whoever it might be, there's a way where, like, how do I'm unconsciously trying to present as perfect. You know, it's like I'm trying to like hold it all together. And the more I can, for me, the more I can release the need for a perfect presentation, the less pressure I feel on myself to continue that, continue that facade, like holding it up. And for, some really clear examples at this point in my life are being honest with my kids about things I've struggled with in the past, and the compromises and characters that I've had, essentially trying to get people to like me. And is it, because I know there's this dilemma, right? Like, if a guy says, I want to be committed, but right now I don't know if I can commit, is the pain or the fear that, like, well, when a woman hears that, saying like, I'm out immediately,
that's like being rejected that can be a very strong experience.
Wow.
I experience that more and more as time goes on, as I'm more honest. I experience that 2 times a week sometimes.
So,
but do you perceive it as rejection in that way?
Well, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. This is going. Keep going. Yeah.
I'm starting to learn that it's just not a good fit, and that by saying what I really have to offer and what I really want, at least closer to it, and then experiencing the disappointment of, oh, that's not what I want. Yes, part of me experiences that as rejection. Part of that probably experienced that on a level of me losing my mom when I was very young. That was a potent part of my life, and I think it echoes. And even if it's not inherently true, it's the story I've been going with,
Sure.
And so but confronting it over and over, and working with, like what Ron and I do, with working on our values and living more aligned and congruent with our values, I realize that it's not the end of the world. I don't experience it like me, this body 3 million years ago getting kicked out of the tribe, or even 5,000 years ago where exile is death. I really am experiencing it like, oh, that's not the right person. That leaves room for another person. Also, pat on the back for both of us realizing that we don't. And I live part-time in Portland, and I live part-time in Northern California. Telling a person that I'm dating that is often doesn't work for me. And so finding when to do that, when do I do that, is the best time, and now it's like I rarely go on a date before they would know that. But I experience a lot of like, this person's amazing, I have to tell them this thing that's probably not going to work for them, and then say no thanks. But now it's not that hard, but that's for a lot of other reasons that have to do with loving oneself. And I think that, again, I would just go back to a greater conversation of the reason that women maybe are finding in general, so generalized, that men can't commit is because men in general and people in general, we really don't know ourselves as much as we could.
Or we spend a lot of time protecting ourselves. It's like another way of saying something similar.
What do you think is there, like when you were talking, what I was really thinking about is the time as you're dating, like, you know, when the last time I dated somebody was my 20s, my mid 20s, and I'm 42. I'll be 42 next month. And so I have grown and matured beyond my wildest dreams. And what's the protocol now for like dating? Like when you have a first date, I got to go on a first date with Daniel and a girl the other night, which was really fun. Neither of us knew that we were going on this first date. Daniel knew, but the girl nor I knew that we were both going to be there.
It's a little practical jokey almost.
It was a little practical.
Not that I would turn a first date into a practical joke, but that's another story.
It ended up being pretty good time.
It was awesome.
Yeah, we had a good time.
Pretty sure it was one of the best dates she'd ever been on, but it also was one of the worst.
It could have been disastrous, but it was all great. Is there a conversation, like, should there be a conversation pretty quickly on, hey, I want to keep this casual on a certain number of dates, a certain amount of time? At what point does a couple who are dating casually begin to say, I'm looking for something, I'm looking for commitment, I'm looking for a long-term thing? Because does it tow you too quickly? Like, if you and I both know that we want something commitment, does that create too much of a what's the word I'm looking for? Are we automatically now bringing too much of ourselves and too much of I can't think of the word.
Pressure?
Yeah, there's
expectation.
Thank you. Expectation. Now has our vision narrowed and we're unable to see a bigger picture because we're just trying to say and do the things that are going to equal a long-term success rather than like taking it slow. I hate to reduce this, to a shitty metaphor of purchasing something, but we've been there where we need to make a pretty committing purchase, and there's like a lot on the line. And
what do you think?
Yeah.
I think it's tricky. I think dating is tricky, especially since a lot of it happens online first. If it happens in person, great, but typically it seems like the common practice is more online connections, and you're set with a filter, so you can put it out there. Maybe people don't like to do that, but most people will say, this is what I want. So before you even know the person, you can read they want marriage, they want something casual.
Well, that's not true. That's only true on I'm on a lot of apps, and that's only true on one app.
Oh, okay. I don't really know all the filters, but go ahead.
I wish it was on all of them, but it's only on one. And then it's left to you to choose whether or not you want to put that information forward, which most people
exactly.
do
not. Yeah, it is optional what you want to add to it. This is a hard question for me because in general, like if you're just thinking about the progression of life, one of the things that is always happening is managing expectations, personal, professional, otherwise, right?
Yeah.
And when we feel hurt, it's because we had a picture in our mind, and when we don't get what's in that picture, we have we experience some type of conflict.
Right.
On the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
And so, and if you're too vague, like I'll give you a personal example. So on one of the apps that I'm on, you can change, and maybe it's on many, but just one in particular, I know you can go anywhere you want in the world. You can pick any location, and you can just put yourself as if you live there. Then if you're going to start trying to match with people and connect with them, when they find out, oh, you don't even live in that same country, on the same continent, it's frustrating. And then I'm like, okay, well, that's more unrealistic than I had anticipated, to be like, oh yeah, if we have this good connection, then we'll figure out how to meet and see what happens. So the more specific I've become, hey, I travel between these two states and here's when I'm here and here's when I'm there.
Yeah.
It's so much more fluid to interact and connect. And there's just, I think, all these little fractions of transparency, honesty, timing, and it's so unpredictable and vast to me. I don't know if there's like an actual answer, but I think it's a big experiment that we're all living inside of and
wild.
figuring it out.
Super wild. Yeah.
Well,
it's uncomfortable. That's my experience.
I bet it is. It makes me uncomfortable thinking about it.
The thing I think it is very interesting what your question, what you just said, and it's something that I confront a lot. That moment, and this situation of how soon, when do we say what we really want, assuming we really even know. And you get a lot of people who say, I want a relationship, a traditional long-term monogamous relationship. Now, if someone says that right away to me, I think that's not what I'm open to right now. At the same time, a little part of me is like, well, I also would love to be swept off my feet by like the most amazing person ever and a great fit. So you got to kind of like say, well, yeah, that mostly doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
But also, I think that it's important to recognize that in general, men not being willing to commit, and in general, women wanting a long-term relationship, both of those can be codependent or undeveloped stances. Because a lot of times what I find is that is like people who are looking for a long-term relationship, they're not doing it from a place that is aligned with who I would observe, dare I say, I don't really know the person, but it's not really, I wouldn't say if knowing this person, they need to jump into a relationship right now, but that's what they want. And then they'll put that out there all the time. But what I've found, and I have found this is pretty open. So like, be gentle here, but this is,
you're also on a recorded podcast that gets distributed to the world, just to give you a heads up.
Everybody be gentle, I'm serious. This is the type of conversation I think it's valuable to have in public, because we're unthreading and getting a little more nuanced instead of saying, we're not having a conversation griping about how men don't want to commit and women do, because that's not a very accurate assessment of what's going on out there. So like we're untethering this with threading it, and putting it on the thing, slice it open, look what's inside. And I have found, because I date consistently, I date with heart, I date with integrity and intention. I really do. I don't always succeed. I definitely hurt people still, but like I'm on the adventure and it's a valuable one. And one of the things I've found is that a lot of women who are looking for a long-term relationship are much more open to something other than that with someone who is going to be honest, and they're open to explore and be treatable. I was dating someone recently who said, I do want a long-term relationship. That's what I look for. She goes, I want to do life with someone. I've done a lot of other ways of relating, and this is what I've arrived on. It was nice to hear. She'd done non-monogamous, she'd been monogamous, she'd been hurt, she'd done well, she'd done all that. She's just like, I'm ready to do life with someone. And then she goes, but I also know that it's unrealistic for me to get all my needs met by one person. And so at this stage, I'm okay with spreading that out. And she's like, Daniel, you offer a lot of things that I want. You don't offer everything, but I'm still am looking what I'm looking for, but I'm going to take something from you, and it was a little bit slightly a transactional moment that we went into, but I appreciated it because it was honest. It made sense. We found out where we fit, and then she's like she's free to do what she needs to do to find what she really wants. And as long as what we do doesn't take too much of her emotional capacity away from what she really wants, and it adds to it, then it worked. That's a person who came out right in the beginning and said, I'm looking for this, but we found something that worked for both of us that could actually aid both of us on our adventure. You know what I mean? So I liked that they said that they wanted a long-term relationship and they were very clear about it, but they also were they knew themselves. Yeah. Because I've been with other people who I feel like they missed out on something that maybe we could have had together that wouldn't have taken away from what they really wanted, because they're just so blinded by this, like, in my opinion, sometimes fantasy that you're going to find someone and then all your problems are going to be solved. Oh, there's a strong fantasy. Morgan and I mean, I've lived in the fantasy, deep in the fantasy of one, thinking that being married would somehow fix my life. Like,
finding the one would somehow
it's probably just going to
make me rise to the occasion. And instead it was, now I'm attached to somebody who has to witness how inept I am at driving this car called my body, and have no, user manual to this brain. And it's taken a long time, a lot of forgiveness, and a lot of saying I'm sorry with Morgan, my wife, over this last 13 years together. And I don't know, I mean, just so you know, Cheri, like, I can't tell you how many times my brain, which is pre-programmed to hit the divorce button because of my family of origin, like it's like just a hair trigger, like, you hurt my feelings, divorce. That's like where my brain goes.
Really? I've never heard you say that.
Totally. Yeah, it totally is.
Oh, wow.
And it's like the thing that my brain brings up first, it just comes to the top, coming to the surface. And Morgan's family of origin, like her parents have been married for, coming on 40 something years. No, 50, getting close to 50 at this point. And so we'll get in a tiff, even a real bad one, even an ugly one, like a real stinking, like multi-month long, where we're grueling, we're in the mud, and we're like, we're so tired that we can't even hit each other, but just the resentment. Like,
what a great metaphor. Yeah.
We're just like looking at each other in our eyes and like trying to hate each other. And never, afterwards, to
be clear, you don't beat each other.
Never. We've never struck each other.
It's a metaphor.
It's a metaphor. It's all a metaphor. But we'll get to the other side of it, and I'll say something like, I was so, I think I even had threatened her with like the courthouse, something at some point. And this was a few years ago. And then on the other side of it, she's looking at me. She's like, divorce never came into my mind as an option.
Wow.
And like, why do you think you need to go nuclear?
God.
And I finally learned years later that turns out, and this is something else you don't know about me, maybe you do, but I did not get diagnosed with ADHD until I was like 38 or 39. And
okay, yeah, no, I hadn't.
And then it took me another couple of years to really like ask questions around how an ADHD brain works and why it thinks this way. And I have since discovered like so much of my neurosis, like so much of that ability to go nuclear really quick. It's just like, that's just the way my brain works. It's like, it's ADHD thinking. It's like all or nothing, black or white, like in or out, like, and it goes back to what you had said earlier about expectations and a picture of something in our mind. And when life doesn't look like that picture, it's all bad. All is lost. All hope is lost. We might as well burn it to the ground.
Do you, okay, so just, I'm hearkening a little bit back to kind of where I ended and where you picked up.
Okay.
When I express that I meet people often who I just get the sense they're wanting to fix some of their problems with a relationship.
Oh.
Now maybe that fix some of their
run
problems,
away,
hard pause, get Ron excited.
Okay.
So I understand that you can know that your problems are going to continue if they're not addressed and not be solved by a relationship.
Yeah.
And maybe a lot of the people that I would, harshly, and prematurely say, oh, it sounds like you're wanting a relationship for the wrong reasons. They might know very well, oh, I know my problems will continue. I would just rather work them out in partnership instead of alone.
I'm glad you brought this up, because I had to do a lot of dismantling for myself, because I was raised by a person who's codependent, who was raised by someone who's codependent. And I can keep going, right? Like, who knows how far back, all the way back to the caveman, right? Like, and I had to become so independent and autonomous on my own and differentiated from Morgan because of the patterns that I saw of codependency in myself, that I was like, finally a couple of years ago I was like, I'm going to be okay whether we make it or not. And I kind of started like leaning towards like, I am in this own shell on my own, like operating as if we're not together. And and which I really needed. I needed that a lot. And it was
I remember seeing that transpire from a close distance.
Yeah. And it was like, it felt good and healthy. And it wasn't until this winter that Morgan and I realized, like, actually there's still a lot of value in the healing journey together. When someone decides with someone else that we're going to commit to life together, and we are going to commit to seeing each other's realness, and we're going to stop presenting the way that we thought we needed to present to be accepted, and we are going to say what we need. We're going to create boundaries. We're, all the healthy things. We're going to therapy. We're doing all this stuff. And Jesus, there's like I don't know how to replicate this anywhere else. I don't think you have to be in relationship to be healthy, but there is a gift of being seen by somebody and being accepted and loved and nurtured through difficult times. It really is. I think if there's a fantasy that has any kind of like hook in reality, the hook is when you both are well aware enough of your angels and demons within you, or your neuroses, or however you want to describe that, and you realize that there's no way that the other person can actually fix you, and there's no expectation for on either end to do that for each other, but what it really is a witness, and also the gift of saying, hey, I know that you are unable to do this heavy lifting in whatever emotional way that needs to happen, and I'm going to love you through this anyway, and I'm going to be with you, and you can fall apart, and you can do whatever you need to do. I've thought about it in I remember I grew up in a church as a child that had the wife was wheelchair bound, and she was really disabled. Like, she couldn't do much more than move one hand and talk. And I thought, I've really have thought about, like, is that a measure of that guy's like character? I don't know where they met. I don't know what part, in her health journey that was, but they were older, and this was in the 80s. And he had described to me even then, like, how, like, yeah, I have to clean her. I have to do, he was being really honest with like how that relationship. And I have thought about that. Like, if I was an invalid, would someone take care of me? Like, would I take care of my wife? And, obviously it's easier for me to say, like, hell yeah, I would do that. Like, for sure. Good.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, I think a person doesn't need to be in a relationship to go on a very healthy growth journey.
No.
Like,
yeah, absolutely.
And if you're connecting with people, but I would agree that connecting with people would probably facilitate more growth.
Yeah.
And maybe there's different times in life where we connect in different ways. But I know that, at least for me, I know for you, watching you do things like you're doing, the growth you can do potentially, Ron, it could only be done in relationship, more like it's happening, and it's you're ready for it. You've taken the bait and the hook, and you've said yes to it, and you're in your spot, and you're going through the growth. I know I'm also doing that, through relating and through focusing on one of my weak spots, which is how to relate healthfully to women, and so I think that whatever a person chooses their path, wherever they're at, just know that if you do it with integrity, if you want to do it with integrity, which, by the way, when I say I date with integrity, like, don't ask like someone I was dating 6 months ago that question, because they would be like, no, he does not, because I fucking reached a spot where I couldn't, like, I was too much to be honest as I needed to be,
it's too scary.
It was too much. It was too much. And so it's a process. But my point being, like, I just think that regarding the question that kind of the question that started all of this, to really spare suffering, or get suffering to be an appropriate amount and not have it be way more than it needs to, just finding one's values and just saying yes to the adventure of sticking to them, and especially through dating and connecting romantically to whatever partner one chooses, or partners one chooses. Like, that's, at least from my perspective, is one of the that's why I love what you do. From the moment like that we started chatting and I saw your podcast, I was like, a podcast that focuses on how to heal breakups. Grief is the hardest emotion for me. Breaking up, it's the most difficult thing for me to do in life. And I was like, this person is doing a podcast that focuses on that and brings people in. It's great work, you know.
Thank you. When I'm listening to what you guys are saying, it's hard because I feel like I could like spend 3 hours on any independent part of what we're talking about. Totally. Coming full circle to the idea of breakups, we are focusing a lot of this dialogue on single people dating, going through breakups. But breakups happen with married people as well. And what I really like and admire about yours and Morgan's experience, I mean, you guys share it to some extent publicly. Yeah. You guys have had several breakups without being divorced.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really like, from being married in my past, if I knew how to just break up with my husband but not get divorced, I've thought about that over the past 12 years of being divorced. I knew then that I did not have the capacity to stay with somebody who I didn't believe chose me and loved me. Even, and I was so disappointed and frustrated with myself because I believed myself to be someone who could do that for him. Like, I can choose and love you in spite of yourself. But I had always thought, well, we would fight together for that. But I did not have any capacity, like nurturing, history, education, mentors, family, friends, like that knew how to come alongside of us to go, hey, you're going to be broken up probably for, who knows, like could be 10 years. And if you just don't get divorced, but you keep sticking with one another through this ugliness and this darkness, it could be a really incredible transformation for both of you together. And I think that could have been a path I chose. And I saw it like intuitively, but I knew my immaturity and my programming would just, it kept me from being able to push through those constraints. So I think that's also another fascinating thing when you think about breakups. It's for me, one of the hard things when we're single is you want to have innately, I mean, I'm going to oversimplify this, that long-term partner where you can accept each other and you do commit and you're like, okay, ride or die. But when things don't go well, like you and your wife, for example, like you're unpacking, you're deconstructing, you're dismantling your whole identity and makeup and then becoming someone different through it all. Yeah. And you're responsible for all this other stuff going on in life. How do you do that when you're just dating, you know? And I don't know how you do that. I think it's really tough. And like we're talking about stuff that's deep, right? Like we don't necessarily jump into those level of connection points when you're in a relationship that's only, even if it's only 5 years old, right? Like there's still a lot of standard operating procedures at play. You know, it's just what is it, the 7-year itch where people start to go, okay, wait a minute, like this is different than what I had thought, or I'm different than what I once was.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's the case. I hear what you're saying, and I think it's easy to think that. I just think that there's like just ways you can't grow if you're just dating, you know.
Oh, I'm not saying that. If that's how it came across, that's not what I meant.
Well, I might have misunderstood. You did say something.
No, I think you can grow either way. I think you can grow, but just trying to share that there's a universal dynamic. Even after you're married, you can still experience that same breakup sensation. Like your pre-programming, you said, is like my instant solution is divorce. Like like we might feel that with our person we're dating, even though we're not married. And like we have the rights, like we're not married, right? Like whatever your values are around marriage is meant to be it's the binding lifelong commitment. It's not meant to be like part-time until I change my mind. That's not the intent of marriage. But with no marriage, right? Like it's like, well, if I change my mind at any point in time, like I know we just need to break up, right? It's a different consequence, at least mentally, if not otherwise. Yeah. But I think, you can grow either way.
we were talking, Daniel came over for dinner last night, and Morgan and I were talking with him, and
it took you 10 years to invite me for dinner.
Worth every minute that I waited. I just judoed you to the ground. Okay. One of the things that Morgan brought up was the difference between choice and decision. And I wonder if when we're dating, we feel like it's a choice.
Right.
Which I want to clarify the choice versus decision thing, because sometimes I think a choice is all you have the capacity to do. Like when someone says, and I've heard this a lot in some communities I've participated in, and that is, today I choose not to drink. And that's the best they can do. It isn't like I decide today, in other words, I make this long-term commitment. I commit to never drinking again. Not a lot of people can do that. That would be the equivalent of someone saying, I'm never going to eat sugar again, ever again, or like cut off any of the other million numbing agents that we participate in all the time, right? I'm never going to watch movies again. I'm never going to do this. Yet I want it, and I'm hoping that a person can, by making a choice every day to say, today I choose to be in relationship with this person I'm dating, even though they're changing, even though they're not the person I thought they were going to be, even though I'm not the person I had anticipated being, I still choose this. And maybe we can go through the transformations we need to go through, the metamorphoses, and continue to choose each other and continue to let our mutual respect grow. This is all here, I'm just making shit up as I go in here, because I've not been in a relationship like this in a long time. So I can't say if that's right or not, but I'm hoping that could happen.
Yeah. And what would help it happen, in my opinion, is to like change and add a few more tools to what relating to each other and being in a relationship, long-term, otherwise monogamous or otherwise, like people sleeping in different bedrooms, having a connotation that you're now out of love or something, like not true. People spending time away from each other, extended, like city slicker time, where you go away for 3 months, to go find your smile. That's not indicative of you are not meant to be together. That's indicative of individual space needing to be taken and experienced away from each other. I think that,
so it sounds like what you're saying is you need to deconstruct whatever you think committed marriage or committed relationship is.
Slamming two lives together into a little house and throwing kids and pets and jobs on top. It's the worst way to like, oh, you're definitely providing a lot of resistance training, and stress. Good for you. Maybe you'll make it through the fire, but you're also like, it's some of the worst circumstances. How about I'm joking now, but like a general acceptance. No, I'm not joking. I'll phrase it how it actually is, not a joke. A general acceptance that let's not move in for 2 years. Keep separate houses for a long time. Have your separate lives, like if you can, all of these ways of relating would, in my opinion and in my experience, help people get along more, let alone non-monogamy directions toward that, where like you can have more flirtatiousness is more accepted, more touch is more accepted. And then all the way into sexual experiences, and all the extreme example being a whole nother lover in life, like just deconstructing the rigid frameworks around some of these ways of relating, I think would vastly help people have success in relationships.
I can see why you would think that.
I know that from experience and myself. Why would you say that? That sounds like you disagree, but you're like,
well, I can't say, I can't agree, because I can to some extent. I can to some extent. Like I think that
your wife is going away on a multiple week adventure because you were like
45 days. That's
you know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
That is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm not saying everyone needs to do all the things I just mentioned. I'm saying there's a vast array of tools and ways that are on this buffet of the table, and some of the rigid ideas of what we think of relationships and how it should have, they cut out that they cut out those options.
No, I am in agreement on a lot of that stuff, and a lot of, and the rest of it, it's a mystery to me. It's like, I don't, like, maybe that works, maybe it doesn't, I don't know.
Really? I'm shocked to hear you say that.
Yeah.
That seems like a cop-out.
I'm tracking with you, Ronnie. I feel like you're doing a good job.
Yeah. I mean, I think
I think
he is
saying.
too, but I still think that
I'm just like adding
yeah
to what you're saying. Yeah.
I mean, I think it has like okay, so you know, the cat's out of the bag. Morgan is going on a almost
was that a cat in a bag?
A little bit. That's okay.
Sorry.
Don't worry about it.
You gotta tell me about the cats in the bag.
Yeah. Morgan is going to Spain to walk the Camino de Santiago, which is a pilgrimage.
Yeah, I got to do that.
Did you really?
Jesus.
Oh, amazing. You should text her.
Yeah.
Just send her a little,
okay.
Some little nice things about that. That's amazing. Yeah. So that had been a dream of hers to do since she was pregnant with Luca, and he's 15 now. And she had gotten to the end of a part of her job this last year where she had the bandwidth, she had the time, and I was just had this download. I was like, hey, I think it's time for her to go do this. We had not talked about it, had not been part of our conversation. And when I went to go tell her, I was like, hey, I think this might be a really great time for you to go do it. She like looked at me and kind of in shock, and she showed me a stack of books that she had brought to her bedside that morning, and one of them was the Camino. And I'm in complete agreement that we need more space than what we think marriage should have. I like, one of you had said beginning, I can't remember who, so I apologize. Like, I think it was you talking about the person you're dating, who says, I understand that one person can't meet all my needs, right?
That's where she's at right now.
Yeah. And like, Morgan can't meet all my needs. I can't meet all her needs, because, and even when and I said this earlier today, like when Daniel came over for dinner last night, like it was fun to watch them talk and have a conversation that Morgan and I were unable to have, Daniel and I were unable to have, but together in that setting, like they had, and it was good for both of them. And I think there's probably, when we get into a monogamous relationship, like we unfortunately probably cut off a lot of relationships that should stay, friendships that should stay open, opportunities to friendships that should stay open.
If you get into unhealthy monogamous relationship, I wouldn't just say it's a monogamous. There can be great monogamous relationships that have tons of other aspects of intimacy with other people.
Yeah.
Still monogamous.
So I don't know. I don't see how you think I'm disagreeing with you though.
Because you said, I see how you could think that that's true.
It's all untested, man. I mean,
go ahead,
I think it's all like, no one knows that is true or false.
I would disagree with that. It's pretty clear that someone can't meet. Sorry, I'm sorry, Cheri. Go ahead.
Well, this is like a to me a framework, right? Like you're coming from the point of view of marriage because of the way you guys have pursued one another and all of the growth that you've done and what that means. You've done it in the framework of marriage. You've even, and correct me if I'm wrong, because this is me as an observer through watching your story online in little bits and pieces over time. What's that book that talks about non-monogamy in marriage?
The one with her name is Esther Perel, Mating in Captivity.
I don't know if it's maybe, and that's the one where it might be that one. It's been really popular the past 2 years, presenting the idea like if you are married, it's okay to have extramarital affairs.
Yeah.
And maybe you might fit into that category of people where then you have a more successful marriage. Do you remember that book? There's a moment.
I mean,
there's a few books.
Yeah, Esther Perel's book, Mating in Captivity, is very popular and says something similar. Yeah. And I've read it.
I'm totally paraphrasing, but there's a moment you and Morgan were in your car and you posted this on social media and you held up the book and you were like, we considered if this was for us and we agreed this isn't for us. We want monogamy, something to that effect. Do you remember that memory?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was that book specifically or one like it, but even the fact that you guys could have the conversation around, do we need to be open to and explore this?
Yeah.
I think is a huge battle, vulnerability, like a testament to how far you guys have come. But to tie this back to what you're saying, Daniel, like they're confronting those options in the framework of marriage where they very much expect, and again, this is me assuming certain things, so correct me if I'm wrong, that they won't be having extramarital experiences. And I just can't imagine Morgan being like, yeah, you can have another lover. It would just blow my mind if that became true. I mean, it's possible, but
Cheri, I'd like to stop you without going into the details. I know a little bit more how the sausage is made with Ron, and it's not as simple as, hey, we just posted and we're it's not that. They are further, and I won't go into the details, but like they are further along.
We're talking about you with you right here.
Guys, I'm right here.
They're more open than what you just presented. And so,
well, I'm not saying what I'm presenting is the full picture. I'm just saying, as a married couple, that's the beginning of their framework, where they're now exploring these other variety of things in the world. That's all I'm starting with. They have a different framework.
I'm just trying to say, feel free to have your mind blown a little bit, just a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
But like loosened up, because, I know Ron, and he's been pretty open with he and Morgan's conversation around this topic. And I totally agree with you. It's just so amazing that they're even willing to have it. It takes a lot of bravery. It doesn't even matter if they ever do that or don't do that or decide this or that. The conversation, I know my friend, has scared him and has triggered him, and he's then had to confront that. And he's like a better person for even having the conversation. So I'm with you totally. Yeah.
Thanks for speaking on my behalf. Really appreciate it. Everybody. I'll do it.
I just think there's something different.
What do you think about you? Do you have anything to say about all the stuff?
Yeah.
It is nuanced, and I especially coming from where we did, like, it was a dangerous feeling conversation to have, and the to clear the air, in case anyone's wondering, like, I still choose monogamy, but probably not for the same reasons that I would have 10 years ago.
Sure.
And 10 years ago, it would have been a question of like religious paradigms,
like what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. And the funny thing is like the thing that I can't kind of like get over the hump with non-monogamy for myself is I don't have the bandwidth for it. Like my brain gets so fixated in not fun ways, even trying to buy archery equipment, even trying to buy a new car, even trying to buy shit in my house, like that. I know how fixated and wild my brain can that the potential of that happening within multiple relationships. There's a reason I don't drink, guys. Like, like I understand there's like certain things in life that if my brain gets on that hamster wheel, like that hamster wheel is going to blow up. But as far as like the character or religious paradigms around that, like I'm open for anything. I mean, I know the Bible very well, and I see a lot of room for breaking traditions and examples of where it worked and didn't work. And I think that the reality is should everything be questioned? Totally. Are you still working with elements that are unpredictable? People, our feelings, our expectations, our desires, our deepest fears, our traumas that we're aware of and unaware of. Like that's a lot of stuff to try to like keep track of. And then you have to measure it against like, well, what are the potential hazards of this? And am I willing to accept the risks? Am I willing to accept the pain and walk through the pain of this? And today I decide not to, I'm choosing not to drink.
Well, I think we're
choosing to be monogamous.
It's kind of like, I know we've just got a few minutes left for me, if you want.
No, I think we should probably wrap this up.
Okay. Yeah. I wanted to say, like, kind of as a closing statement with this, is that, and this is one of the reasons that I like the name of your podcast and what you do is it's a big bag of worms for me, and what I have found is that I almost always am breaking up. Like from the very beginning of meeting someone, I experience the feeling of breaking up, because being honest for me feels like I'm going to push the person away, and I'm choosing and I'm showing because I can tell if something's going to work or not work, but I can also tell, well, I have this other part that hopes it will, and maybe if I just did this and this and that, And so doing that less, it's just like, as soon as I meet someone, we're breaking up, in me being honest with them, because I got to say something that I'm afraid that they'll reject me. And a lot of times that happens. And that's why being honest is so scary. And I think that that is been really healthy for me, is embracing the breakup, embracing people coming in and out of my life, embracing being honest, and that person saying no thank you. They're all breakups for me, and it's just kind of, it makes life a lot easier, but it also makes it more painful, but it also makes it have more integrity, and the ground that I'm walking on each day being firm. And you can do that in a marriage. I think you do that in a marriage. Yeah. You've done that a bunch. And I just think that that's the underlying thing that's important through all this, is just, can we know ourselves and communicate that and get better and better and better at that? And that'll help these breakups.
You should tell that to every guest who comes on.
I'm curious, in closing, I hate to wrap this up so fast, because this is like, we could really talk about this a long time, and both of you, you have so much more experience than I do, and then I know him so well. It's just nice to have this conversation. This is a nice dynamic, but I am curious, kind of just, what do you kind of think in closing sort of about this conversation, at least today?
Well, first I want to say, when you share that, to me, I really hear your heart express its longing for connection and intimacy. Something I've found with people, myself included, is we give away what we long for. We're so willing to share a part of ourselves that we want to experience with someone else. And I see that over and over in the handful of conversations we had. I mean, we had a pretty intimate conversation about your relationship history, and
for sure,
the fact that you're so passionate and committed to being that person who learns to face your fears, vulnerabilities, and then watch how that unfolds is really powerful. And I love that you have a voice in that, in this breakup healing, personal growth journey. So I just, again, like, see that and hear that really, really clearly and well with you. And I appreciate being able to hear that, and the way that you're imprinting that in these stories. It's really
that's huge.
A great model for people who are going through the same type of questions and wrestling matches that you are.
Yeah, thanks. We were just talking last night about, take dating more seriously. If a person wants to be and find someone else, like you had a friend who made it his job for you. He had the privilege to be able to do that, and he dated aggressively for a year, and he found someone he matched with, through that process. And I just think that dating is something that just, like, it's a waste of time, or I shouldn't really prioritize. It's like, if it's, prioritize it for people and go on the adventure. So that means a lot. Thanks, Cheri.
Yeah, of course. And then just to some of the bigger philosophy of what we're discussing, I think if you're single trying to work through your healing, and same thing if you're married and working through healing, there's no formula, there's no answer. It's just a whole bunch of trial and error.
That's true. Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah. And trying to decide what's right or wrong, what's the best, possible way of going about it. We can't know unless we're in it. Like you were trying to say to Daniel, like, I can't agree or disagree with you fully because I'm not on your side of the fence. And then when you,
I think that was what I was trying to say. Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Meaty.
Yeah. I probably should hang out with us more often.
Cheri, I'm gonna add you to this call.
I'd be happy to. Awesome. Yeah, and we can't know, but when you have gone through the commitment side of it and have had, I'm just using you as an example, and maybe I got too far in the personal details of stepping out of my bounds to try to help illustrate what I'm communicating, but you only can speak from the perspective that you have, and you and Morgan have gone through several breakups, and I'm just using that word loosely, to maintain a healthy, functional, forward-moving relationship, whatever it ends up becoming and how it becomes that, right? You guys don't know. You're just holding on. It's a wild ride. And just in that concept of giving ourselves permission to, one, look at the picture that we thought we wanted and had, and whether it's of who we are or what the relationship is or who our future, unknown mystery person might be, and then to experience it and learn from it, just like you're saying, Daniel. Like it's It's messy. It's uncomfortable. I don't think it gets more comfortable as you're married. I think it continues to be a different set of variables that you learn to work through. I think as we get older, we have more discernment and awareness, perhaps, of what that looks like for us. Like, it's nice that we're in our 30s and 40s and we can say so with so much concrete clarity: know yourself, know what you want, know what you don't want, and then move in integrity and move forward in that.
Yeah.
But when we're younger, it's just like, I think you're hot, and want to do this life, who knows, right? It's just a lot less.
Yeah,
And
totally.
plus, our culture has shifted a ton in the past 20 years. Like, how
even
people
the last
interact.
10 years, I was thinking, like, even since there weren't like dating apps, like when you and I were like first friends, like I was just thinking about the time we spent together. It's so kind of surprising we didn't run in the same circles a couple of times, like weren't in the same room at the beginning of this, because I met him through Buzz. But my point about that is like, even in 10 years, it's changed dramatically. I was just thinking, like, there are ways of doing relationship that no one could imagine 10 years ago because of these apps. It's dictating the way that we present ourselves and the way that we now have to like maintain some idea of like, am I matching up with a thing that I've presented out there? That's what I'm guessing is like. And the brain is still, like more or less prehistoric. Like it's still like, on the African savannah, trying to figure it out, like trying to figure out where the mammoth is. And now we're dealing with the untold increase in factors that our brain has to handle, and it is not easy.
I just want to say,
doing okay? You need help with anything? You just need a hug or anything?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I
just having to walk through. No, just like the rigmarole of dating online. And
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know that it's easy for dating to be a pessimistic. Oh, the world is doomed, and I hate online dating. It's like, in my opinion, in my experience, dating, like social media, like any other social media, is a reflection of you. If you hate the apps and you hate doing it, it's probably got more to do with you than the apps. And maybe that thing has to do with is that you can't stand being online. Yeah. Well, then that's a you problem, not an app problem.
Yeah.
Can I like add to that in just a different metaphor that I think hopefully people might relate to is, every time you jump into a pool, like let's say the temperature outside is a little bit cooler and you don't know, like you don't want to jump in because like you're anticipating the water is going to be too cold for your comfort. It's like one of those things, like when you fully immerse yourself in the water, like you get warmer, right? If you go swimming in the ocean, once you're in the water, it's not as cold. It's the same thing. It's like there's this trepidation of like, what the heck is what's the temperature check and how do I navigate it? And some people are just like full on, I'm going to dive in. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll deal with it. And then other people are really, really like, tepid and nervous and like might change their mind and run out and come back in. Like, I think it's like a similar experience with online dating.
That's a in 6 years of online dating and doing it pretty consistently, I, in the last month, am finally attracted.
You're probably like a lighthouse for people, like, hey, come on in. The water is fine.
Well, yeah, kind of, but my point is just in the last month, I've started attracting people that I really align with. It took me 6 years of working on it to get my profile, how I present myself, grow my life, how to communicate, how to play the game, enjoy the game. It's don't just dive into this whole new world and think, oh, it doesn't work. Online dating sucks. Right. It's like, you gotta, there's a lot to learn, but it's beautiful. The connections that are being made are amazing.
Solid.
Just to be sensitive time, I just want to add this one other comment when you brought up decision versus choice and back to that whole like primal, how our brain works thing. I love that you guys brought that up last night. In my experience working with people's bodies and helping their bodies heal, which is like, holistic, it changes your emotions, changes your thoughts, etc. Our brain needs choice to change. So making a decision can get us in trouble because then we feel the pressure, whether it's conscious or not, to commit and follow through with that decision, even if all of our sensory feedback is telling us we need to change our mind, but we don't let ourselves make a different choice. And then we like assume whatever our history, our narrative is, wherever those ideas come from, like here's the possible ways about going to keep this commitment or escaping, kind of like how you said, like, oh, I only knew divorce, not the 500 other ways to problem solve, right? Like your brain just picked the one thing that I was most familiar with.
Yeah.
Novelty is what literally changes our brains. So when we're like babies growing, all of our developmental stages are about novelty and making a decision or making a choice. You know, I mean, a choice is a decision, but the idea of I made a decision is like almost like a finite commitment versus every moment I get sensory feedback, I'm going to adapt the new information in my reality and then learn from that and make a new choice. And that's literally how our brains grow until we die. So it's pretty cool. And just we're designed to do life by making choices. Otherwise, we get stuck in freeze patterns. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Appreciate that, Cheri. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You're a deep well. Thank you for participating in a conversation with us. I know, you know, talking. It's just tempting to like ask you more and more, but the truth is that part of the reason me and Ron do this podcast, and a big reason, is for us to work out how to talk about this and how to communicate. So thanks for just listening so well. You're such a good listener.
Thank you. Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on as a guest.
It's good to see you, Cheri.
Nice
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that we got to do this. All right. See you next time. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.